Hi friends, welcome back to Julia at Home. I'm Julia. It is nice to see you again, or nice to meet you, whichever the case may be. Today's video is a homeschool year wrap-up for the year 2022 to 2023. And this past year I had a 4th grader, a 2nd grader, a 3-year-old, and a 1-year-old. So it was a challenging year, and I knew it was going to be just because I had the 3-year-old and the 1-year-old, and then my 4th grader can do some things on her own, but she still needs help with other things, and my 2nd grader needed help with most things, so it's just a lot of work. And I think I have another year or two with the toddler where it's going to be challenging, but just keeping that in mind, it's kind of coloring the year, as it were. That definitely influenced like what we were able to achieve overall this past year. I will do a separate series of videos on our curriculum for this coming year, so I may mention a couple things as I talk, but I'll go more in depth and there'll be more videos on that coming soon, so don't worry about that. But if you do have specific questions, let me know, because then I'll make sure I address them in those videos. Okay, I'm going to try to touch on all of the subjects and all of the children, but I'm gonna just kind of try to chat with you. So here we go. I'm actually gonna start with my oldest two. Again, I had a 4th grader who turned 10 this past year and a 2nd grader who turned 8. And for homeschooling, if you don't know, it's really not important that you be like completely on grade level with every subject. And I would say most homeschoolers are, you know, maybe ahead on one and behind on another. It's just kind of like you follow the child where the child is, and that's what makes the most sense. So when I say that, that's just, I'm kind of keeping track of their ages, and we do have some curriculum that follows the grade level. So for example, math. We have been using Math Mammoth, I think for a couple years now, and I do incorporate some manipulatives in with that. We have some Montessori manipulatives that I really love that I have used with both of my older two children in conjunction with Math Mammoth. A lot of it is them just doing the program at this point. My 4th grader in particular is kind of old enough that she's getting the abstract concepts perfectly fine without the manipulatives, but I do occasionally, if she's struggling, have her pull something out. And she finished, let me talk about math for a minute. So she actually had to start the year through no fault of her own. I started having her do this curriculum when she was a little bit older, and I think we started in 2nd grade. I'm not 100% sure, but I wanted to make sure she covered all the things in the 1st grade book. I didn't want to be missing like random like clock reading and money stuff. So I had her, she started a little later, so she's actually been kind of catching up. Just again, no fault of her own, just she was behind because of me. So she started her 4th grade year finishing up the 3rd grade curriculum for Math Mammoth, and then she's done almost all of 4th grade. We're like so close. I don't know how many pages we have left. I would love if she could finish it before we start the next school year so she can start fresh with the 5th grade curriculum. But she's been doing a great job plugging away. It's not her favorite subject to do, but she's, proficient in it, so that's great. She's also, over the past 2 years, she's memorized all of her multiplication tables. I don't know if we've done 12s, but she's got 1 through 10 for sure down, so that's awesome. My son, 2nd grade, did the 2nd grade Math Mammoth curriculum. He finished it, I think, in April, and I gave him like a few equations here and there just so he kept up with it. But yeah, he kind of just breezes through. It's not a problem for him, so that's good. And one thing I will mention at this point is that went well this past year is we really, I think, continued from the prior year. We started a groove kind of halfway through the year of doing their individual school subjects like first thing in the morning, well, after breakfast. First thing after breakfast, starting their individual school subjects. And I have a notebook for each of them where I write down what I expect them to do that day. So I'll give them like the specific pages in the math book and so on. And so they can do a lot of it on their own, but they do also need some support. And the other thing that's been helpful in conjunction with this is doing it first thing in the morning. My husband is around to help them. So he works from home, and he kind of has an off schedule where he works later in the day. And so he'll start like a little bit later than most people and than he used to. And then just work a little bit later. So our whole day just kind of pushed. And that's been working really well for us because it's been nice. It's really kind of some of my only time that I get to myself in the morning, so I kind of take that. And then sometimes I'm also helping with the little ones a little bit because, man, they're a handful. So yeah, having him there, he's kind of the go-to guy for math help for the most part. I can help them. He just, I don't know. They just like to go to him better for math, and that's fine with me. So that's been working really well. Some of our other individual subjects that I want to touch on, let me just make sure I'm going to remember them. Okay, so my 4th grader finished the Good and the Beautiful typing program. So I think there's 3 typing books, and she was, I think, halfway or mostly through the first one at the end of last year, and she finished both 2 and 3 this year. So she's done with that. I now have her, since she finished that, I'm having her do occasional narrations typed. So we kind of rotate narrations between handwriting, cursive, handwriting, print, and typing now. So she's gotten practice in all those things. And she actually, on her own, I haven't read it because she doesn't want me to, but she's been writing, I don't know if it's a book or just a short story, but she's been writing something. And she's been typing it up on the computer on a Google Doc. So that's typing practice. Shh, don't tell her. She's just kind of been reading on her own. I haven't really pushed assigning her books this past year. It was just something I didn't want to battle her on because she does kind of battle a little bit sometimes. And but I think this year I am going to try to assign either specific books, or I think I might pick like an area, like a type of book I want her to read, and give her like 2 or 3 options to choose between. But I'm going to try to intersperse some more kind of assigned books along with whatever she wants to read. She reads all the time. So her reading is, she's very fluent. Her reading comprehension is great. I'm not really worried about her practicing that. It's more so just like, what are we getting from the books? So, and I love to read for fun as well. So I'm perfectly happy for her to be reading for fun. I want to give her plenty of time to do that, but I might also just put in some nonfiction and some historical fiction relevant to what we're doing and things like that. So, that was a little bit of a deviation towards next year, but this past year I just kind of let her read, and yeah, she enjoys that. And let's see, I'm just trying to think. Oh, copy work and dictation. I did not follow up as much as I meant to on this. So we did occasional. It looks like we did about 27 weeks of copy work, which is actually decent. It's more than halfway to my goal, what my goal was, so that's fine. We only did 5 weeks, it looks like, of dictation, so not as great, but I don't know if I'm going to continue that next year. We'll see. We'll see. One thing we did add in the middle of the year that I am happy with is spelling words. So she does written narrations for various things. My goal is to have 1 a week. It doesn't always work out that way, but like when we do an artist or composer, I usually have her write a narration on what we learned about them. And she also just, it's like lots of random things she'll have a written narration for. So for like history, science, things like that, I will go back through what she has written and find words that she has spelled wrong, because I don't want to correct them at the time, because we're trying to isolate difficulty. Now, I always encourage her to ask me how to spell things if she's unsure, but she doesn't always ask, or sometimes she thinks she's spelling it right and she's not. So she's put so much effort into writing this thing, getting it straight from her head onto the page, remembering all the information, that it's like it's just not cool to be like, and you spelled all these things wrong. I just feel like it's like dampens the hard work she's put into. So, and I also don't do like a lot of grammar correction on that either. So it's something we come back to at another time. And that's what copy works for, because you're copying other people's things. So you can talk about the grammar and everything. This is following advice from Julie Bogart at Brave Writer. So I can link her information below, but that's where I kind of learned this, and it totally makes sense to me. So what we've been doing is I've been going through kind of her older assignments and the assignments from the past week, and seeing what words she may have spelled wrong, and those will go on a list. Sometimes she doesn't have that many that she spelled wrong, so I will also come up with words that I think are either relevant to something we're studying, or just come to me as words that are somewhat difficult to spell or weirdly spelled. And I will make a spelling list for her. It's usually 10 words. Give it to her at the beginning of the week, and every day I'll have her go through them and write them out. And then we will just quiz her on them every day so she practices. And the goal is for her to get all 10 correct at the end of the week. Any that she gets wrong on the last day gets bumped to the next week's list. So I'm really liking this. I think this has been working really well for us. I have done some really fun themes. I did one week where half of the words were vegetables because I was like, broccoli's hard to spell. I was planting my broccoli out in the garden and then I thought of all these vegetables that are just kind of weird spellings. So that's what we've been doing. I think that covers all of her individual subjects. She's still been taking piano. She's going to do one more year. She's just improved so much. I'm so impressed with her skills at it. So it's not her favorite thing to do, but I require them to practice. And so she's improving despite it not being her favorite thing. But yeah, I'm impressed with her piano playing abilities. My second grader is still working through Logic of English Foundations, and we've just been going through it super slowly. Some people do them all in like 2 years, and that's just not how I roll. So we do it once or twice a week. We're not doing it during the summer. We're taking a little bit of a break. And so this past year he finished B. He was more than halfway through. I can't remember exactly how far he was, but he finished that in December, I believe. And then we're about, not quite, but almost halfway through C. So that was an accomplishment. And on top of that, I think the biggest thing is his reading has just improved so much. In addition to Logic of English, which we were trying to do 2 days a week, he's also just been reading at least 10 minutes a day. And towards the beginning of the year, it was frustrating for him, and so he didn't want to do it. But now we're at the point where he's more excited to read. He's obviously reading things more fluently. He's definitely advanced in the difficulty level of his reading, and he's been starting to read other things. So about a month ago, we sometimes play these Professor Noggin games at dinner. They're basically these cards, and they have questions on a topic. And he asked if he could read me a card. And I was like, yeah, sure. And we just did that. And inside I was like, yes! Because he wanted to read it on his own. So, and my husband and I both kind of looked at each other. We were like, yay! So, yes, that has been like a huge improvement this year. And I'm just excited to see I'm just excited to see him keep going. I mentioned already that he finished his 2nd grade Math Mammoth curriculum. So he did that. He also worked through a cursive workbook this year, so his writing has improved. I have not been as on top of doing copy work with him as I meant to, so that's going to be something that I'm going to try to increase this next year. I might also have him start copying some of his narrations. So I did this with my daughter when she was younger. It's kind of a mid-stage between just doing oral narrations and doing written narrations yourself. And that is, he will tell me his narration, I will write it down, and then I will have him copy it. And that takes out having to think about how you spell things. How do I write that letter? What's supposed to be capitalized? Where does the period go? Things like that. So he can just focus first on getting his thoughts and what he remembers out, and then focus on the writing and mechanics. So yeah, that's kind of the stage we're at now, and I just need to be moving him forward with that. Okay, finished that. I'm just gonna stick here with the older two for a little bit longer and talk about some of our group subjects. So I'm gonna start with history, because we started off the year fantastic. We actually started probably earlier than we officially started school. I don't know when that even is, kind of like a ambiguous date anyway, but we studied the time period of the American Revolution, like colonial times in America, American Revolution, and the creation of the United States government and Constitution this year. And so we started that kind of in the summer, and we did some excellent field trips. We went to Plymouth, Pawtuxet, which is where the Mayflower came in. The Pilgrims, or as they called themselves, the Saints. And we also learned about the Wampanoag, who are the Native American tribe who was living there at the time. Well, there was a deserted village, but living in the area at the time was their territory. So we learned a lot about that. And then we did several field trips around here, including going to a reenactment at Fort Ticonderoga, which was really fun. We also went to Boston and did the Freedom Trail there, where you walk through the city and see some of the sites that are important to the Revolutionary War. We listened to the Revolutions podcast, and it was fantastic. This is not aimed at kids, it's aimed at adults. But yeah, it's fantastic. Anyways, I am going to put together a video very soon on the resources that I used for this whole colonial American Revolution time period. So yes, look for that soon. We also did unit books in conjunction with this, and I like how that turned out. So I will share that with you in that video. But it was a really good, strong start to the year. And then I had meant to continue covering other history throughout the year, and we just didn't get to it. We got involved in our science, which I'll come back to in a minute, and just didn't continue on with the history. So that's something that I wish we had done more of, and I'm going to try to be more on top of doing more history this coming year. And because I do, 2-year-old's gonna join me apparently. You say hi? Mama's filming. So, oh, yeah, we're talking about history.
Hey.
I love doing the units, but I tend to get caught up in them, and which is fine. I'm going to keep doing some units, but I also do want to cover more history, and I can't do all of it that in depth. So that's something I'm thinking about for the next year. So the 2-year-old, you're just going to hear the 2-year-old, he's just around right now. I'm not 100% sure what he's doing. Oh, hang on. We've gotten him some blocks, but he's still nearby, so he's a wild card. You want to say hi again?
Hi.
There you go. He was playing with the telescope, which is a good segue into science. So for science this year, we did astronomy, and I waited until after we finished our history unit, and then we were going to do about 2 months on astronomy, and it ended up stretching out into, I think, like 4 months. And it's not that we necessarily covered more, I just didn't get to it as often. And this is a theme. This is a theme for this year. And I think this is mainly due to having the 3 and the 1-year-old. And there's a lot of interruptions. I had just personally this past year been really tired, like fatigued. So I'm going to try to stop nursing him soon. And then I'm going to go get checked out and just get all of my levels of all the things run so I can try to figure that out. Because this is hard work, guys. Our homeschooling in general, mothering 4 children in general, being an adult, it's all hard work. So I don't know if it's just my phase of life that's making me tired or if it's something else. So anyway, that is one of the reasons I didn't get to as much as I'd wanted to for group school in particular, for history and for science. But we did have a really good time in our learning about astronomy. And it's something I want to continue to look at the stars and everything. I cover the resources we used in a recent video, so I'll link that here. We visited a planetarium as part of our study, and that was the best idea. They did a show on what the stars would look like in our area for that next week or so, and it was fantastic. So yeah, that was a really good part of our science this past year. Okay, I talked about history and science that I just, I wish we had done more, but what we did do, we did well. I feel good about that. For geography, we actually got through most of what I wanted to cover. Yellow block. Yes, yellow block. We were doing Europe this past year, so we did a lot of map drill to learn all the countries in Europe. And there's still a few that trip my kids up, but it's close enough at this point, I think. I do want to kind of occasionally go back over them and go back over the United States as well, which we did the previous year. But yeah, I feel good about, the amount we did. We got to all of the countries. I also had my kids do country reports, and they're kind of the last thing we wrapped up in June. I had them start them earlier, but we were kind of just dragging our feet on actually putting the reports together. So we ended up putting together travel brochures. I went ahead and grabbed the printed out brochures that we made. So my 4th grader did one on Italy, and my 2nd grader did one on Iceland. I helped both of them. I obviously helped the 2nd grader more than the 4th grader, but they just made little information packets, I guess, with some pictures we found online about the country. So for example, what my 4th grader wrote about Italy is, Italy has lots of great places to visit, landmarks to see, and foods to try. Here are some of the best things to see, visit, and eat, along with some other fun and useful facts about Italy. So, and then I nudged them along on some things to add, like food and art to see in Italy and such. I don't think my son has art, but he has the food was definitely the big thing. He had a lot of different places to visit in Iceland. So this is his. We also read a book that takes place in Europe. We read The Heist Society. It partially took place in New York too, but it had some Europe in it, and it was an art heist book, and I enjoyed it. I had wanted to do like a meal from each of the countries that they chose, and then maybe a country of my choosing, and we didn't quite get to that, but we could still do that this summer. I do like to cook Italian food in general, so I might just do a big Italian meal for fun. All right, so we talked about geography. Let's talk about, we like to study artists and composers. And so we did cover several of each this year, actually. Instead of doing, so Charlotte Mason does like a 12-week long, like once a week dive on one artist and one composer. And instead of that, I tried to make them like shorter and do them a couple times a week. And I found that helped me get to more of them. And we also rotated them. So we would do like an artist and then a composer. And then we did some Shakespeare. So we did Much Ado About Nothing. Well, we read about Shakespeare first. Learned about the playwright himself and his life and his times. And then we covered... And I had actually meant to do that when we were covering, you know, Renaissance time period when he was alive, but we didn't quite get as in-depth as I'd wanted to. So we did that before starting our first play, and we did Much Ado About Nothing, and then we watched the movie, which is fantastic. And then we did Hamlet, and we also watched that movie. The kids did not enjoy the movie we chose overly much. I would in the future choose a different one. We did Kenneth Branagh's version, and I think it's actually the only one that's the complete play. And there are, I would argue, parts of the play that it might be better if you just cut. Like, they're just not necessary and extraneous. That might be sacrilegious, but that's what I'm saying. So that all went well. Let me just see. I'm trying to see if I have notes on who we covered. For our composers, we did Vivaldi and we did Handel. And for artists, we did Maria Marian, we did Rembrandt, we did John Singleton Copley. I think that's it. And again, this year, I'll probably start with a composer and then we'll keep going. Because I had more on the list for this past year that we didn't get to, but that's fine. For doing art, we did some. It's something that we enjoy doing, and I just always feel like we should do it more. We did, like, I would do some inspired artworks by artists when we covered them, but again, we only did, 3 artists, so that's not a lot right there. And we do, like, you know, random painting especially is one of our favorite things. But we could do more. That was one of the things we didn't get to a lot. We also didn't get to much nature journaling, which makes me sad. It's one of my favorite things. And so I need to push on doing that again. It's one of the things that fell through the cracks. Also, so PE, I don't really have a plan for PE. I didn't really have a plan for PE. We did swimming lessons last summer, just like we're gonna do this summer. My kids run around a lot. They ride bikes sometimes. And then my second grader did baseball this spring, which I think was a really good experience. I want to do some more, like the baseball season is so short and there's not a whole lot of time for practice. So I want to do more practice on that with him. But I also just want to do like more intentional PE activities so that they're exposed to that and know how to move their bodies when they get into those situations, you know, like jumping jacks, things like that, stretching. And we might do some more yoga during the winter when when it's super cold, I'm just not going to get outside as much. Like I want to, but just the whole like having to bundle everyone to go out the door is exhausting. So I think having something else we can do on days when we don't want to get outside is a good idea. I think that's like basically for my second and fourth grader what I wanted to talk about, what we covered. Highlights were definitely some field trips that we did. My second grader's progress, especially on reading, excellent. And my fourth grader's progress on typing, also excellent. Doing things in the morning worked really well. I see you. Using unit books worked really well. So I'm seeing how I can incorporate different books for things next year too. Let's talk about the little two a little bit. I'm actually gonna start, well, he's standing right there, so I'll start with him. He just turned 2, so this past school year he was 1. And yeah, he's just growing and learning. We did the occasional like practical life activity where he might like spoon things, but I didn't really have a set time that I worked with him. He he likes being read to, so that was good. And he enjoys our circle time. He did start in the middle of the year helping to move the ring on our calendar. So he's definitely learning and growing, and I will be doing more with him this coming year. My 3-year-old, who just turned 4, so she was 3 for this year, our big thing that we did is she's completely potty trained. So at the beginning of the year, she was not potty trained. I think we were like just starting, and she is now completely all the time, nighttime, all the time potty trained. We go places, I don't worry about it, other than the normal, like we should all go potty before we leave a place. But, and I do like bring extra things around, but I don't think, I mean, it's been a long time since she's had an accident, even at nighttime. So that is excellent. 1 more potty trained, 1 more to go. But we're not worrying about that yet. I like to wait until they're closer to 3. I find it just goes easier. So I've been doing Montessori activities with her, and we had finished up the sound game and we started working on the sandpaper letters, which she's really excited about. She loves doing the language activities, but she definitely, there's something that she learns differently than my older 2 at least. So working with her on the Montessori activities has just been different, I guess, than working with the other 2, as far as her ability to focus and remember certain things. And so I'm looking into ways to deal with that and work with her more. I just in general need to be more consistent working with her, and I think she's a child who just needs a more consistent routine. We had one for a while, but it kind of comes and goes. I myself love setting up a routine, and I'm not wonderful at following it, at least for the full day. So we had like our morning routine and such, but yeah. I need to work on that for her specifically, and she just needs like stuff to do all the time. She's done a lot of painting and playing with Play-Doh. She really likes that kind of thing, coloring. They do that a lot while I'm working with the other kids, and I want to have more set up for them in that respect, because as I've been talking about the things I want to do more of, like I wish we had done more history, I wish we had done more science, I wish we had done more art. There's all like activities that take time and attention, and it's harder when you have the younger ones who are getting into things that they shouldn't, or just need to eat constantly. That's something that is an issue around here. I don't know if it is at your house. I feel like they're constantly asking me for food. All that kind of stuff this past year was a little hard, so I do want to have a better routine for them, better prepared and planned activities for them, so that we can get to some of these other subjects a little bit easier. We did do a little bit of Preschool Prodigies with her, which is a online music program that uses mostly bells. They have some different things now. I think they have a piano program and a recorder program, but we've always done the bells, and that's aimed at the preschool level. They have a toddler program too, but they both have really enjoyed doing the one with the bells, so we tried that and they enjoyed that. We also tried starting some Little Pim, and we're actually starting with French. So my older 2 I did Italian with for a while, and then I was getting so much pushback. They didn't seem to be having a good time. I just let it go for right now. I still love the language and I still want to brush up on it, but I decided that I wanted to learn French. We are near a I've wanted to learn French for a while. We live near Quebec, the province of Canada, where they speak French, and my brother actually lives in France and is fluent. But all that being said, I'm rambling a bit again. We did cover some language. We have not gotten through all the sandpaper letters. I think we're through maybe a third of them, and I'm not entirely sure she completely has them. So we'll probably just start again with a couple this fall. I'm taking a bit of a break. And we did a lot of the sensorial materials, and she enjoyed those. We did, you know, some practical life, some patterning and things like that, lots of counting and numbers. So she's almost ready to start with those materials too. And those are all Montessori subjects, I guess. So if you're more interested in that, you could check out my Montessori videos. And she did music, and I was sharing with you before we got distracted that I started learning French, and so I started doing a little bit of French with the little ones, specifically the 3-year-old. The 1-year-old still working on his English language skills and learning to count in English, although he is getting there. He can do 1, 2, maybe 3 now. So we've been counting in our calendar in English and Italian and French, so that we learn all the numbers for fun. I still struggle with the French above 10 though, so we're working. So I'm working on that. Here you go. And you might have seen we also did some baking, we did art, we did, got outside and such. So we did a lot of things over this year. So overall, I think it was a successful year in that everybody's alive and healthy and well, and we did cover basics. So people are making progress with reading, with math, with learning group subjects, with learning to walk and talk and use the potty. So yeah, I would call that a success. Anything else I suppose is extra. I have been obviously, you could tell as I've been talking, I've been thinking a lot about the next year and what I want to do it differently, what I want to improve on, and what I want to prepare for. And so I am going to be working on those videos very soon, and also things like our colonial resources and such. So I will see you soon with some of those videos. And until then, I hope you all stay well. Bye, friends.